Originally, humans in the shamanic era, they were living amongst nature, and they had this thing called animism. Animism is when objects, stones, trees, they contain a life. And the shamans used to talk to the plants and they used to talk to the trees. When you we think today, because we have our science, that we're very intelligent and that it's impossible to talk to animals and it's impossible to talk to trees and plants, even though there have been scientific experiments which show that plants actually grow better when you talk to them. When you talk to something, the entity, animal or plant, doesn't necessarily understand verbatim what you're saying, because those animals and plants, they're not human species. They don't have the same mentality. They don't have the same emotions. But that's not to say that they can't receive energy which is contained in the words. If you think about it, words are just basically a vehicle that contain energy. They're containers. They're like submarines. And when you have a thought, you therefore transmit the thought to someone else through words. And the word needs to be codified and decodified. If you don't understand the language, you can't receive that energy or that thought. Remember, thoughts are energy. Thoughts in words, if you don't understand the word, you don't receive the energy. However, just because you can't understand the word doesn't mean that you can't understand something about what's going on. Even when you don't understand the language, sometimes you can understand whether the person is happy or sad. Plants and animals, they're very sensitive on different levels, and they can see things that we can't. Animals, they can see energies which are in the room that we can't. They start barking at things. We have cats in order to protect the house. We've got animals as talismans. So in the past, people who were much more sensitive, because they were dealing with nature and the natural world and what goes in the natural world, because the natural world doesn't just stop at plants and greenery. There is actually an entire universe behind those plants and those and that greenery, which involve different dimensions and the spirit worlds. It's just through technology and science, the rationality of it, that we've decided to dismiss this stuff as old wives' tale and peasant talk and conspiracy. However, within science, you have quantum physics, and quantum physics talks about things which are extremely spiritual. In effect, some science actually has more to do with Buddhism than it does to do with rational thought. And science, I believe at the quantum level, can become quite irrational. In the olden days, there was no intermediary between us and the animal, plant, natural world. It was us and nature. As time moved on, that there was an intermediary, which became the priest. The shaman in the olden era wasn't always just a priest type figure. This idea that the shaman represents the priest or the priest represents the shaman is not actually correct. The shaman helps communication between person and spirit, or he acts on spirit's behalf, but he acts directly with spirit. He has a visual experience. He has an audio experience, a feeling, a real feeling experience, as if someone's touched him, not just, oh, I feel or I intuit. No, it's actually a real feeling. And many people within the tribes and the communities of the olden days, many of them all practiced shamanism. So they may have had one person who was an elder which might have represented, but usually it was probably a group of people that represented who were shamans. But those younger people would have grown up into the older positions. In today's society, we don't have people growing up into priests. We allocate priests, or someone decides to become a priest, and they therefore decide in our modern society, or society in the past, that the priest should represent God. But the priest doesn't get audio, he doesn't get visions, he doesn't get these physical sensations. So the difference between the priest and the shaman is very large. What we see going through the history is the separation of human and nature. The priest comes in and he says to the congregation and he says to the people, I now represent God. In order to get through God, you have to come through me. And you have to come through me because I'm the only one that can understand this book. So God is now represented in this book. But I'd like to tell you something about this book. This book depends on nature. The book is written on paper, which comes from trees. The book was written in ink, which usually came from beetles. The book was made with glue, which came from probably rabbit skin glue. The book was bound with animal hide, which comes from nature, which are animals, natural beings. Therefore, the book that contains the word of God can only exist on the back of nature. Nature has to come first. Nature has to be the supreme. Nature has to be the support. Then the man who comes along cannot exist without the minerals, cannot exist without the sunlight, cannot exist without the water, which are all creations of God. So in order for God to have his presence, if we are part of God, if our soul is part of God, if we are a manifestation of God, God can only sit in nature within a vehicle called the human body, and that human body can only exist if it comes from nature. Therefore, again, nature runs supreme. Human doesn't come before God. Nature comes before man's ability to commune with nature. In effect, it's nature which allows the human to commune with God. Now, nature is a raw energy. The water, the sun, the light, the fire, these are raw energies, and humans personify those energies. What they do is they cut those energies down, wrap them up, put them into bits of academia and intellectual thought which are palatable, and then we eat them. But they are basically a diluted down version of rawness, of raw energy. To have raw energy, you need to be in the nature. You need to make a direct link to the nature. If you don't do that, then you cut that ideology down. You get the rawness, you define it, you turn it into gods, you turn it into concepts, turn it into ideologies and isms, and then you give it to the people and you sell it to the people. From this, what happens is humans become separated from nature and thus become separated from God. If we take into account again that nature is God, this idea that, worshipping nature is devil worshipping. How can worshipping nature be devil worshipping if God created nature? If God created nature and you worship something that God created, how can it be devil worship? Unless, of course, you think that nature is God. But if God is a manifestation of nature, then surely he is God. So worshipping the nature shouldn't be a problem. Humans can live without God, but they can't live without nature. Therefore, nature has to be supreme to God in this argument. But it shouldn't matter, because if nature is God, then worshipping or going to nature and living off nature is actually in effect living off God. Now, this is very important because we're going into the transhuman age. The transhuman age doesn't want us living off nature. It wants us living off technology. And that is where the humans are being led to go. We are being made to be dependent on our smartphone. We worry more about our smartphone than where our water came. We worry more about our computer than where our food comes from. We worry more about our social medias and our profiles and our pictures and our editing and our photoshops than we do about our health. And this is all of that society, all of this social media society is developed from technology. Technology is dead. It's not a living being. Technology comes from nature. It's an abstraction of nature. Everything in technology, from the minerals to the wire to the gold to the metals that it needs, the plastics, the glass, the transistors that it needs to be in existence, has to be mined from nature. It's nature that gives the technology that then gives to us. Now, what we're doing is we're creating technology, we're developing technology, and we're developing AI. Now, that AI is being set up to control us. And this is one of my issues. Why are we developing a God, which is AI, to control us? Or why are we developing a God to follow? We are developed from God. We follow the God. We follow the maker. We don't follow the thing that we've made. God in the Bible didn't follow Adam. Adam followed God. Humans make technology. We therefore follow technology. It doesn't make sense. And if technology is dead and we turn it into life, we turn it into something to follow, something to praise, we're creating a cult. Now, if the cult is not alive, it's a death cult. And if you've got a death cult, which is then giving you decisions or leading you how you should live your life, this is a nihilistic form of ideology and philosophy, which is therefore about to lead technology. And what humans are being trained to do and programmed to do is to accept and acquiesce to this new cult. Nature never caused humans to be depressed, to be anxious, to be ill, to kill, to manipulate, to lie, to torture, to rape, to abuse. That was humans. With technology, we see those traits being used even more. The pornography, the abuse, the sexual abuse on which technology allows the amplification of these things to happen. The famines, the wars, the killings, the rapes. These are all far higher now than they were in the past. The only thing that you can get angry with for a tribe in a forest or a jungle is eating other people. Cannibalism, that's about the only thing you can say that they're bad for doing. But they never went around killing people. And when they went to go and attack other tribes, one of the most difficult things for them was not to lose people, because people were so important. When they went to go and attack other tribes, they wanted to get the children in order to replenish their tribe, because people were so important. But now in war, when we go and attack other countries, what do? Well, the children don't get their parents, the parents are lost, the children get put into camps, and children are abused. The women are killed, the men are killed, everybody's killed. But it's more to do with the children, it's more to do with the abuse and the hurt of the children. Something which the communities in the old days very rarely did, which was to touch or hurt the children. They took those children into their tribes. When one country goes and invades the other country, they don't get those children and bring them into their country, they put them into camps. And in those camps, there is mass rape or mass abuse of children. And when those children grow up with all those traumas and all those problems, when they become the parents, when they become the leaders, when they become the solidification of the society, when they become the mentality and the mentality of the society is built up from the individuals which have been traumatized, what do you think is going to happen to the general mentality of a society? And once you go from country to country to country doing the same thing, what are you doing? You're building up a trauma consciousness of the world. You pick on one country, then pick on the other, then pick on the other, then pick on the other. What you're doing is you're transforming the world. You're transforming the individual. You're making behavior modifications through psychology and war by the trauma of children. If you treat nature badly and you treat the animals badly, it's very easy to treat humans badly. Just a little bit more, little bit more, little bit more. You're in a community, you then need to farm. When you have the farming, you've got a hierarchy. Within the farming community, you've got a community above you. The lords, the ladies, they look down on the peasants just as badly as the farming community look down on the animals. And so you start to build these pyramid groups. You start to build hierarchy. With hierarchy comes power. With power comes abuse. Animals have never been treated well. Humans are animals. We're farm animals. We're farm animals for other things. We're being farmed in this society. One of my favourite bits in the Bible is Noah. When Noah is told by God to collect the animals 2 by 2, obviously in those days it would have been a man and a woman, and he put them in the ark so that there was lots of fecundity, so that, things could go on after God had got through his tantrum destroying the world. When Noah got out of the ark, what was the first thing he did? Sacrifice an animal. Why would you go and take an animal for 40 days and 40 nights? And then as soon as the water's gone, get one of the animals out that you've saved and go and kill it. what we're doing, that's a sacrifice. So the gods like sacrifices. The gods like killing. Animals kill animals, humans kill animals, God kills animals, God kills us. But now a sacrifice is very different. Instead of killing animals, the humans get killed. But we don't get killed physically, we get killed spiritually. We're killing all the animals, we just make them go extinct. And we kill the animal spiritually or emotionally by dumping it in a zoo for nostalgic reasons. The new zoo of today is the society. Instead of putting us in a zoo because we're a far more complex race, what they do is they give us pills called Xanax in order for us to be kept in the zoo. We use fences and cages to keep and contain animals. We are contained ourselves through medication. And what's even better is that we medicate ourselves. The animals in a zoo don't put their fences up and say, right, we're going to contain ourselves. No, but the human does. The human says, right, we're going to contain ourselves by giving us lots of pills and Ritalin and all sorts of drugs and destroy our brains so that we can maintain a society which farms humans out. No animal would do that. All the animals are wild. But we as humans think that wildness is savagery and that it's bad and that it's a peasant thing and that we shouldn't have it and we should be refined and disciplined. That refined and disciplined attitude that we have to maintain the society through all those nice wines and good food that are the goal, that are the carrot, to maintain that, to keep that, to go that way, we need to drug ourselves to keep that zoo afloat, to keep getting that refinedness. When you had the great artists like Picasso, Matisse, Van Gogh, Michelangelo, Raphael, Leonardo, Botticelli, their refinedness was also a savagery. I mean, if you want to go and look at Gauguin, he's into a lot of trouble now because, he slept with some very young girls. But he understood that part of being the artist was the savage. If you go and look at Van Gogh, for instance, he understood he needed to be wild. If you look at Picasso, he understood he needed to be wild. And some of that behavior that they got themselves into was quite bad because it involved sex and some things like that. But then what's so different from the society that we live in, where every computer is filled with Pornhub, where there's mass addiction on pornography? What's the difference between being refined and being addicted to pornography? But because it's concealed in our own homes, nobody can see it, therefore it's okay. And the people, the savages, the wild people that go out there that try to live, and because they don't complement or agree with society, they're picked out, they're honed in on, and they're looked at with a microscope. But their behaviour is no different from the behaviour of other people. All that happens is that it's expressed in a different way. The separation of nature and humans will continue, and the new priest is going to be the AI. What has the priest done in the past that we're proud of? The priest has allowed abuse, the priest has allowed war. The popes used to ride on white horses to go to war. The Muslim priests, they invoke sometimes terrorism. The Jewish priests, what are they doing? Not too good. The Catholic priests, well, they're just terrible, what they're up to with children and sexual abuse. But we put massive belief in them. Now, this new belief that we're going to have in AI, it's going to give us miracles. AI is going to create these fantastic inventions. It's going to come along and offer us what the religions in the past never offered us. And we're going to have belief in it. We're going to have hope in it. And when you have belief and hope in something, you give away your power and you give away your control. But just because AI can do miracles, what is a miracle? A miracle is just something that you don't understand with the science that you have. For instance, an occultist doesn't really believe in magic. He actually believes in science, but he believes in science in a different dimension, which is not reached through this physical dimension. It's reached through symbols and actions and incantations. So if the occult is science, and what we have is science, then miracles don't really exist. It's just that angels and metaphysical beings work in dimensions and on sciences that we don't understand yet with the technology and consciousness that we have. AI will make us more intelligent. It won't make us more conscious. And there's a big difference between consciousness and intelligence. We keep confusing intelligence for consciousness. Because we can build things animals can't, therefore we are better than them. We don't measure someone on their capacity to commune with the mysteries of the universe, because you can't measure it. And if we can't see it and we can't measure it, then we don't want to think it exists. For the same reason that science doesn't explore the metaphysical realms and the occult, because science can't prove it. Science can't work with it, which is one of the limitations of science, which was created in the Enlightenment era when science and religion, or science and spirituality, separated. And for good reason, because if the spirituality is a moral code for science, because science and morality should be working together, science and spirituality should be working together. If spirituality is a science, but a metaphysical science, and the science that we have is a physical science, then the two should be put together. They shouldn't be split. But if the metaphysical science, which is a guide, is split from science, then it doesn't have a moral code, and therefore science can therefore go and do bad things. It can go and create war and destruction and bombs. Most of the technology that we have comes from military technology. Military technology is built to control, to kill. So the technology in effect that we have is ill. The microwave, I think, came from missile technology. Sensors, cameras, probably come from drone technology or mapping technology. We don't build technology to care and to help and to do good things. We build our technology off how to kill people. And so you have to understand then that if all our technology is built from that source, there must be some sort of energetical link that technology holds in a symbolic way, which affects us. And if we're filling the world with that type of technology coming from that source, you can understand where the technology is going to take us. AI is our new God. We are building AI, which is an inversion. God builds humans, humans praise God. Humans become gods, build technology, technology controls humans. It's an inversion. It shouldn't go that way. And how is it going to happen? To build AI, AI needs food. It needs data. Okay? Because it's dead, it's coming from nothing. That data comes from humans. So AI, which is God, the new technological God, needs humans to live off. Therefore, it's hungry. The society that we create needs to be created in such a way that it gives off information. Therefore, we're being farmed out. Just as you put a sheep to go and graze, to fatten it up for meat and for its pelt. Humans, being far more complex, are being farmed out in different ways. The boundaries and the borders are the drugs that we take to keep us in that confined area. But the area isn't physical, the area is mental. Because the humans have a much greater capacity, mental capacity, than animals. Which doesn't mean to say that we're better, it just means to say that we're different. You then create a society, for instance, consumerism, with angst, with problems, with anger, with hate. You build up the police, you build up the medicines, you build up the hospitals, and you create all these problems and you extract data. It's data farming. This is what the human condition is about today. It's about data farming. And all that data gets collected. Now, we don't think that that data is important, but it's very important. It's not important for anything at the moment because we don't have the technology, the supercomputers, the quantum computers to process it. So we're getting loads of technology which is unprocessable. But what that technology, what's happening is that that data is waiting for the technology to come. And when that technology comes, it will just suck in all of that data. And with that data, it will then be able to create these miracles that we're waiting for. Just as we're waiting for the second coming, we're waiting for Allah, we're waiting for Maratruba, the Buddhist god, Mara, I forget his name. Just as we're waiting for Jesus, just as we're waiting for messiahs and saviors, the new messiah, the new savior is going to be in the form of this AI. The miracles that will happen will be given to us every day. We'll believe in it. It will cure everything. But it's us that created that AI. It's not AI that created us. And when it's got that hope, and when it's got that belief, and when it's got that trust, it then dominates us. It then controls us. We then go to it. We then want to become like it. We then transmute. We then create transhumanism. We then modify ourselves. We then become cyborgs. We then put that technology in ourselves, becoming it. We then become a manifestation of it. The AI then manifests itself in the world through us. We merely become a vehicle. We no longer become a person. We no longer become an expression of God. We no longer become someone that's experiencing life in reality. We become something for something dead to manifest. And that's an illness. It's a trauma. It's an inversion. It's not evil, but the manifestations are seen from a human, emotional, mammalian point of view as evil, because that's how we interpret inversion, disruption, distortion. What is the sacrifice for this new world? When the new world started after Noah, apparently, the first thing that happened was an animal sacrifice. What's the sacrifice today? The sacrifice is the human soul, it's the human spirit. We don't kill anymore, okay? Humans. We just put them in mental prisons. We just kill the animals, okay? We just kill the nature. But we won't kill it completely, because technology will always need it. It will always depend on it. And technology doesn't want to kill itself. It doesn't want to commit suicide, but it wants to control. Our sacrifice as humans is to go and sit behind a desk with a packet of pills called Xanax. That's our human zoo. That's our containment.